It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. As we are in insane times and topic on everyone's mind is COVID-19 or the coronavirus, let's start there. Right now, scripting this makes me want to look at the stats because yesterday, the world just crossed over 1 million cases of the coronavirus. Let's see where we are at today. Today, the 4th of April, 2020, at 11:34 a.m. Brisbane time, there are a total of 1,098,025 cases. The crazy thing is, when I first checked, it was 19 cases less than the number I just stated. Then I decided to refresh the page because I wanted to check whether there was any changes. And if you haven't listened to the last volume, well, I think you should because it is all about the coronavirus. Right now, there are 723,319 corona cases worldwide. Of that, there's a total of 33,993 deaths and 151,804 that have recovered. Of the 185,797 cases that are closed, 82% of those have recovered and 18% of those have died. We were actually warned about this. We were warned about this a while ago. This is a Vox interview of Bill Gates 4 years ago.
Why don't you describe for me, as vividly as you can, what it is you're worried about, what it is that the nightmare scenario looks like?
Fortunately, there's very few things, and most of them are very low probability. Some big volcanic explosion, gigantic earthquake, asteroid. But at least in the nuclear case, you've got to say we take it quite seriously. We budget a lot of money, have a lot of people who think about nuclear deterrence, and I'm very glad that work's being done. And I rate the chance of a nuclear war in my lifetime as being fairly low. I rate the chance of a widespread epidemic far worse than Ebola in my lifetime is well over 50%.
It is hard to keep up with how quickly things are changing, even though in general, things change for us quite quickly anyway. Entrepreneurs I'm talking about, mothers, parents, athletes, artists fall into that same category. We don't know what to really expect usually, and we constantly are dealing with change around us. Others don't, and I suppose they find it hard to adapt to these times. And even though we have sometimes, we find it hard to adapt to these times. And also, if you're finding it hard, reach out to someone. Get clues on why your mind goes through the same thoughts on repeat and why you feel certain emotions irregularly. Break that cycle. Small, baby-sized, brave steps. Anyway, today we go inside the mind of the creator of Thailand's leading suppliers for medical equipment, but also has other companies that lead the way in energy and transport. Actually, it is kind of appropriate that we hear this volume because it follows from one of the coronavirus, because I want to ask you this one question for the whole time you listen to today's volume. When this whole thing is done, how do you want to be remembered? That question isn't one to be taken lightly, and when I mean remembered, I mean remembered by you, by the people you care about the most. So when I say it is appropriate, it is because anyone who meets this person will remember him for his kindness. His name is Noom Dara. Well, actually, his friends and family call him Noom. His actual name is Nantia Darakananda. But I will refer to him as Noom through this whole volume. Noom How would you describe what it is that you do?
I work my best to help improve the lives of the people of Thailand through the use of technology, which, of course, Thailand doesn't have. So we acquire technologies, or we create the technologies to help improve their quality of life.
Wait, no. What do you really do?
It's hard to define what I do because it involves a lot of industries. But the core of it, if it's not something that is essential, and not, I don't do anything luxurious, nothing to do with lifestyle branding or something that is not needed. That's how I define improving the quality of life in a meaningful way, in a necessity way.
It's so insane because I still didn't really understand what Noom did entirely until he mentioned something at the end, which kind of gave me a glimpse. The thing about Noom is that he is special. Out of all the nice people I've met, he is the nicest for sure. And I wondered what would be the biggest piece of advice he could give us, because we all feel like we could have done better. Because, hindsight is always 20/20.
I guess it's true, and it's in hindsight. But if I built the business and think about the exits before I start, then things will be handled differently. And I thought I would build a business, and I never really looked at the exits or the end. So it goes back to the 7 habits, I guess. Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. Right. And that's a great lesson. And I read the book, I took his class, and I didn't really internalize that until now. I think for all entrepreneurs, we are a little bit gung-ho. We only look the positives. Otherwise, we would be too scared to do business. But a business is a life. It has a life. It will end one day. The ending could be that it's purchased and merged into a bigger corporation, or most common is that it will go bust. And most entrepreneurs will go bust. So how to prepare for that ending, to make sure that it's a graceful end, not a horrendous ending, is important.
Here is that habit from Stephen Covey. It's habit 2 of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And this is Stephen Covey explaining it himself.
Think about it. Ask yourself, where do I get my knowledge of myself and what my vision in life is? What is it that I am really about? What is truly important to me? In habit 2, begin with the end in mind, is a clear and powerful declaration that you are the guardian, the protector of your identity, of your future.
And by the way, the end doesn't have to be revenue based or size of company. Fuck the generic metrics, especially today when multi-million-dollar companies are worth 0 in a week because of the crazy times and the crazy virus we are living through. The metrics are going to change, and metrics change. The value is important. Okay, that's my rant. You'll understand more as we go through this volume. Noom, what were your earlier days like before you started your first business?
I've been pre-programmed since I was very young. My parents would tell me, you can study whatever you want. In the end, you're going to come back and work with your father anyway. So I took it and I studied actually applied physics, which is something that I never used from the day that I graduated college. And it's a shame, but it's true, that I wish I studied something else like business or finance or whatever else. But I when I finished college, my mom sent me back to Thailand because we have factories
Back from?
back from the US. So I grew up in the US with my mom because she opened up a sales office in the US. And then afterwards, when I finished college, she sent me back to work in the factory with my dad. And I worked with my dad for about a year and hated every single minute of being in a factory. Funny thing is, I've never thought myself as anything else except the possibility of being an entrepreneur. And this is just because my family has always been into business. My parents, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my uncle, everyone around me have their own business, their own boss, so to speak. And so I grew up with that around me. So it's either work for my dad, who is an entrepreneur, which I really didn't want to. I really wanted to do something to prove myself, and then naturally I just did my own thing.
The dynamics and values of a family can have a huge impact on a child and the path that they choose to take in life. In a survey conducted by Scorpio Partnership in 2014, with over 2,500 high and ultra-high net worth individuals participating across Europe, Asia, the United States, and the Middle East, the results found that 60% of successful entrepreneurs came from a family with a history of business ownership. According to the report, the entrepreneurial family member would often provide a startup capital, but would also act as a source of encouragement by clearing the emotional pathway for potential entrepreneurs to choose a more risky career path rather than the path of what would be considered to be a safe but also challenging path of a profession such as a doctor, lawyer, or banker.
Being responsible for a bunch of people is hard. I don't think the words are being responsible. I think the words are more like feeling responsible.
I didn't actually think about that until all the problems started. Because once the problem started, then I think about, if the people who were working for me, I have to fire them, what will they do? Because each of them will have people that they need to support, their parents, their family, their wives, their children. So to have, now that I think about it, and I'm thinking about it, that's a responsibility that I need to be the custodian of, their success. That's what I feel my job is as well, not to only for the shareholders, but now I'm looking at all the stakeholders. So the stakeholders are not only the employees, but the families of the employees. If I have known or thought about it in the beginning, I would have been much more cautious, because every step that I take forward means that I'm more responsible. I feel more responsible for those who trust me. And those who work for me, I believe they come to work for me because they have a certain trust in me or in what I stand for or what we're building. And for me to only look at one side, which is just to push forward all the time without looking at the back end of the business, I feel that I did not do them proper justice, that I have been a little bit more irresponsible, or a lot more irresponsible than I have to be, than I need to be.
And I can attest to the fact that problems come up that seem like they should be easy to fix, but no part of me would have thought of that when the whole thing started in the first place. I am really, really good at starting things. I also sacrifice systems for what, at the time, I consider speed. Even though I wrote a master's thesis on software quality systems and processes, and even though I have no proof that speed has ever worked instead of systems, I keep doing it. And the irony isn't lost on me.
As an entrepreneur, I'm more excited about technology and new products. And I'm always searching and looking for for interesting technology and so forth. But I did not pay enough attention on the back end. I did not get the check and balance in order. I did not get all the systems and the processes in order. So that was a painful lesson that I went through, and I wish I had put more attention and gotten all of this in order before I expanded, because there's always new business to be made. But without the great and good, I guess, systems, you're just building a house of cards, which when it collapses, it's just a house of cards that just falls right down.
So for someone like me who loves to start things, knows the value of systems and processes, how would I scale if I had to, quote unquote, go fast?
As all of us do, we think about the value that we add. Whatever business you start needs to have value, and it has to be a substantial amount of value that you add to your product or service. Otherwise, people would not buy or subscribe to your product or service in the first place. And when you have that, I guess, that concept of the value that you add to the business, then you start constructing the framework. How does it work? The business work. I think about what I need to do to get to the point for the clients to buy or subscribe to that product or service. Yeah. And then you have to build the ecosystem around it. Fortunately, I have the back end now. Yeah. So all I need to think about is to look into, okay, so how do I move forward? How do I market the product? How do I educate the consumer or the clients? How do I do the sales? And most of my products are really not B2C, it's more B2B. So how do I approach the B2B clients? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to approach? How do I need to get their attention and so forth? And all of that is a process in itself. And that's how I start. And any of my business, there's no overnight success. I've never found a single product or service that I created that is overnight. Some will take 2-3 years at the least. Some have taken me 6-7 years to get traction. I mean, I just kind of have to have faith and believe in the concept of what I'm trying to value, that I'm trying to give. Because if and it's hard. It's not easy, because you go through a lot of obstacles in the way. You have a lot of challenges as an entrepreneur to do anything.
Long game. It's all about the long game. Before we go to break, I wanted to get to the part of what Noom does. Well, kinda.
We've held a monopoly in Thailand. Virtual monopoly is, monopoly isn't really allowed, but we hold a virtual monopoly in many business for a certain period of time, because of and we lost it through technology change. But I've gone monopoly for blood testing of HIV and so forth twice. With the mosquito traps, we have also, we were the pioneer. We were the only one who did that. With the natural gas transport, we are still the largest, I guess, company doing that in the country, and I believe probably Southeast Asia. And my trucks goes around from the Earth to the Moon and back every year about almost 50 times. A total amount of distance that we travel.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
The main objective of this audio project is to bring together entrepreneurs and creatives who share similar values so that they can find the courage to put out their authentic voice for the right people to hear, which allows for them to make their impact on the world. Every great movement started with a memorable speech. For access to full-length interviews, go to psychologyoфentrepreneurship.com and click the button.
Before the break, what a badass Noom Dara is. But I suspect that he would really want you listening and understanding this part of the volume that's coming up. It's all about learning.
You know, I just went through a very, I'm still going through a very, very difficult period of time. And I had to coin this phrase again. I have to go back to Tony Robbins because I got a lot from him. That things doesn't happen to you, but it happens for you. So when all of this happens to me, instead of looking or blaming why me, I look at the things, okay, so what do I learn from this? What is this lesson teaching me? Or is the universe or whatever trying to push me to tell me to go somewhere, do something, be someone? And I have found that by looking at things from that viewpoint, I have sought out and try and worked on self-improvement to up-level myself to who I need to be to overcome all of these challenges.
Who do you have to become to overcome your challenges? Actually, I have to give credit to a gentleman by the name of Paul Dunn, who is the creator, co-creator, and co-founder of Buy One, Give One. Before, when I ran my first We Are podcast in 2015, which was the first podcasting conference in Australia, and more importantly, I had not run an event ever before, and definitely not a conference. He and I were on a phone call, well, actually, Skype call. I told him about how afraid I was and how could I make all these claims if I wasn't sure I could pull it off? And he said, what if you thought about it like this? What kind of person would Ronsley become if he attempted this goal? And that's how I've been looking at things every time things look hard. It's really not how many times you get knocked down. It is how many times you get up. I hope the true fans know where that quote came from.
I believe that life is, we as human beings, we are meant to go through life to learn. And it's an endless cycle of learning. So I don't take it as a negative or a bad way. I just take it that, okay, I am being taught something that I need to know. And then looking at the lesson itself, these are good lessons. It's not, even though it's painful, I'm by all means, it's absolutely painful. And I have many, many nights that I can't sleep at all. But looking in hindsight, that it really makes you stronger. And the best thing for me is that, all these lessons are the lessons that I will be able to pass on to my children. They're my why. They're the reason why I want to be the best version of myself, so that I can be an example for them to follow, and as well as a mentor for them to learn without having to go through all these things. Of course, they'll go through their own life challenges, but just that if they learn from the mistakes that I've made, they don't have to go through this kind of issues, and they can be fully present to face whatever the issues that they will face for their lives. I'm thinking about the consequence when I don't sleep, when, what will happen if things fail, blah, blah, blah. I think the best for me that I've found to work is that I think about what I need to do my best in preparation for whatever challenge it is. And then, and then adjust when the situation comes. And for me to just worry about the consequence I find it doesn't help. And it's just a waste of my energy. And I'm just saying this, and I'm not saying that I can do it, because I do get caught up in being in that stage, many times. I have to actively pull myself back and say, okay, instead of worrying about that, what can I do today? What I need to do, this week, what I need to do this month, what I need to do this year. So it helps me. It's like a two-sided of a coin. Instead of looking at the bad side, you look at the things that you need to prepare. Then at least for me, I'm able to objectively analyze the actions that I will need to take, the plans that I need to do to prepare for whatever challenges I'm facing. So I guess my thing is, prepare for the worst, but fight all I can for the best. I don't hope for the best. I fight every single step of the way to make sure that the best happens.
Instead of worrying about that, what can I do today? And you know what? Sometimes the answer is nothing. Don't beat yourself up about the fact that sometimes the answer is nothing. Noom, what do the battle scars look like?
I had a second in command, and I put a lot of trust in him to put all the systems in place, because he's 10 years older than me, and he had much more experience. But in the end, I did not do the proper job of making sure that he did his job, and he didn't want to do this job, because in the end we found out that there were fraud committed in our operations and so forth. Yeah. And so to have all of that systems in place, meaning that the fraud could not have been committed, because it would have, they would not have been able to possibly do so. The system would have really caught all of this. So that's why I said what I said about having all the proper systems, a check and balance in place before expanding. Because when you scale, you're basically it's like a race. You are on a constant race, running all the time. You're looking forward. You're not looking back. And if the people in the back are not doing their job, then you have a problem. And I'd had a problem.
Sometimes we don't make peace with something and go to bed because we are tired. But do we really rest? That one night of non-rest becomes 2. It turns into weeks and months and sometimes years. And when we finally arrive at a point to find that out, we get angry with ourselves, and because there's no one else to blame for the situation we haven't made peace with, we blame ourselves and are unkind to ourselves first and then to others around us. Or maybe we get perspective. The perspective that a previous version of ourselves wouldn't have known, I suppose.
Sleep and its effect on one's quality of life is often hard to keep in good balance. It's all too easy to fall into a cycle of overworking, overthinking, and undersleeping. In fact, according to data collected by Sleep Cycle, no country out of the 48 countries that participated reached an average of the recommended 7 to 9 hours sleep per night for an adult. Lack of sleep can lead to a range of problems such as irritability, negative mood, depression, lack of energy, and problems with memory, as well as long-term effects such as heart disease. In an article published on the Scientific American, medical director of the Harvard-affiliated Sleep Health Centers, Lawrence J. Epstein, explains that the best way that you can catch up on what they call your sleep debt is by tacking on an extra hour or two of sleep per night. Although we would love to believe that sleeping in an extra few hours on the weekend will magically fix the sleep we compromise through the week, the article also suggests that for the chronically sleep deprived, which is probably a higher amount than you may think, take it easy for a few months to get back into a natural sleep pattern.
Everyone fails at who they really are. We all care about what people think about us, especially the ones that say they don't care about what people think about them. Because the ones that say they don't probably care about what they think of themselves, and sometimes it is an identity that got them somewhere, but doesn't really serve them anymore. Maybe. Deep? Yes, I know. But this is very true for me, for sure. Noom, are we wishfully thinking about business when we start without a plan? But also, is it the fear of failure about what we think of ourselves that stop us from achieving what we are meant to?
I think a lot of that has to do with, I don't want to say wishful thinking, right? It's easy just to say what you just said. But to get to that position, to I guess, to incorporate that value of what the meaning behind what you said, there are other things you have to consider. Is your business plan correct? Is the value you're adding truly a value? And it's not a value in the mind of the entrepreneur. You have to look at it from the mind of the consumer or the people who will buy your product or service. And a lot of time, we as entrepreneur look at it only from our perspective. We don't take their perspective. And once we get caught up into believing our story, and we believe that our product or service is the best in the world, and we get frustrated, and I get frustrated. Why aren't the people buying? Why aren't they subscribing? This is fantastic for them. Then I have to go back and think, okay, so from what their perspective, what do they see? Are we a must or a should have or a good to have? And if we are a must to have, then why aren't they buying? Is it because the price point is too high? Is there an alternative to what we do? Is it whatever it is that the consumer or the clients are thinking in their frame? So that's a very essential thing for me to look at, not from my perspective, but from their perspective.
I suppose in the end, it is all about leaving some sort of legacy behind, some sort of spirit behind. Through the ideas we craft, people we inspire, things we do.
What determines a life well lived? What's the barometer of a legacy? I contend that your legacy is a book that you write that you never get to read.
I only want people to remember the impact I have on their lives. I don't really care for them to remember the success or materialistic things. Again, going back to that, we are only memories, and I want the people to remember me in the way that, okay, this person, what he's done, or the lessons that he's able to pass on, help me meaning that person, in a significant way with my life, with their life. I think that's how I would prefer to be remembered, not for the success, but for what I'm able to make an impact for whoever knows me.
I think legacy is misused a lot, especially when it's coupled with guilt.
Welcome back. A stalemate in Congress. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is withholding articles of impeachment from the Senate in an effort to gain leverage over the conduct of the trial. Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. He is the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee. And sir, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. It's good to see you.
What are you expecting for the next 2 weeks as Nancy Pelosi still has yet to send those articles over to the Senate?
Well, what we're sort of expecting is coming up on a time when she's got to decide what she wants to do. I think she had a bad Christmas carol, if you want to use the analogy of the last couple of weeks. She had a ghost of Christmas past, with which she trashed all the rules to try and impeach this president and rushed it before the end of the year. She has a president sitting here now with a bad case of bad articles of impeachment that have no basis in reality to impeach the president. And she's looking at a future in which she has no legislative agenda. There is nothing in the House for her to do because they have wasted so much time and taxpayer dollars on impeaching this president that we're sitting here literally waiting on her to send articles over to try and influence a Senate decision in which she has no control over. That's how sad we've become and how sad this speaker's legacy is so far.
Sometimes legacy is perspective on the platform you've been given. Each one of us have an advantage, whether the family it is we are born into or the freedom we have today because of who has given their lives for us to have that freedom.
Kobe's legacy is as one of the most fearless scorers we've ever seen in the NBA. He's sort of ruthless in a way.
I mean, he's going to be remembered as one of the all-time great basketball players. You know, he certainly is in the top 5 of all time. He was a great basketball player, just brilliant on the court and tough.
Kobe, my thoughts are with you. Absolutely. Rest in peace, young man. This loss it's just hard to comprehend.
Life is not only about being happy, but it's more about the impact that you make to yourselves, to those around you, and to the world. And in the end, I believe that we're only memories. And what kind of memories do they want to leave to their children or the people around them when they pass on? So that's what I would like my children to think about in whatever they do.
So I know things are hard right now with the change happening across the world because of the coronavirus, which, by the way, from the time I started to the time I finished scripting this volume, the total number of corona cases sit now at 1,196,063, which is a whopping 98,038 new cases. That is about 98,000 people in less than an hour. That is about 100,000 people in less than 18 hours. But when this whole thing is done, how do you want to be remembered?
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I'm Emily Fletcher. I'm the founder of Ziva Meditation. I'm a relatively new mom. I'm a new author of a book called Stress Less, Accomplish More. Like, there are people who are better teachers than me, and there are people who are better on camera than me, but there's no one who's as good at both as me. A lot of us aren't aware of the level of stress that we're in all the time, like what our baseline has become. And if you are living your life in that, you're not making good decisions, you're not creative, your sleep is likely not productive, your immune system is not functioning as it was designed, your cellular regeneration is not happening as it could, your neurogenesis is not happening as it could. So it really is costing us a lot. No one can sit still until you actually learn how to meditate. What would I love now puts you into present moment awareness.
I interviewed Noom because he's a leading entrepreneur in Thailand and across the globe and leads a large team of people. He has the kindest heart and is also passionate about lots of things, including the welfare of the people of Thailand. He is at a point where his company is looking to be listed on the Thai Stock Exchange. This is his first podcast interview and said that he didn't know what value he could offer. Noom is a legend, a connected father, loving husband, and he is my friend.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Voiceovers, editing, and sound design by Kelly Bonnyman. Guest research and content by Claire Gould and Corinne Castles. Project managed by Kelly Bonnyman. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm part of the team that made this production come alive. I work as a part of a global team with our studios based in West End, Brisbane, Australia. If you would like a podcasting checklist, email me at kaylee@amplifyagency.media. That's KAILI@amplifyagency.media. We specialize in finding your voice and making sure it's heard by the right people. If you are considering whether a podcast is a good idea for your business, check out our other show on shouldistartapodcast.com. Are you still listening? Here's a little gift to you for sticking around.
Through the ideas we craft, through the people. No.
To a natural sleep pattern.
His name is Noom Dara. Actually, his friends call Nanthia Darakananda. I think I got it right the first time. Maybe that bird will stop chirping. God damn. Anyway, I'm going to close this window.